This
order.
conference
And if we
will
could
now be
stand
recorded.
for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible,
Liberty and justice.
Thank you. All right, I would take a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
So moved.
John made the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
John and Rick?
Yep.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Bruce?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Maggie?
Aye.
Rick?
Aye.
And Jerick votes aye. All right, the next thing on the agenda is an update on the Main Street construction project. Mr. Cavett.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the City Council. Well, I'm actually in town today and actually going to probably be in town all week just because of all the stuff going on. If it seems like there's a lot going on, it's because there's a lot going on. It's actually been a little crazy keeping up with them. As you can see, a lot of the work going on right now in the core of downtown is the utility work, mainline sanitary sewer, water, services to buildings. And actually most of the utility work will be completed up to Columbus Avenue, probably by end of the week or beginning of next week. Next week, actually, one thing that's going to happen is currently the crossover of Main Street is at Columbus Avenue, and that's going to get shifted sometime next week. They'll shift it to First Avenue. There'll be a temporary gravel surface put down, and then they will close Columbus so that some utility relocations can take place. And then once that happens, the contractor is going to continue moving on east. Again, they're going to be working on some storm sewer in the area they're working at now, some more sewer and water services. And then they will be getting close to having all the city utility work done literally by the end of next week. They've already started on some of the roadbed construction, starting up from down by Wells Fargo and working their way east. They're up to the first block of First Avenue Northwest, and then they're probably another starting even as early as tomorrow, starting to work on the next stretch up to Central Avenue. So things are moving along. And I guess that's a good thing because the sooner they get things done in the core downtown, it'll make life easier for a lot of the businesses and folks in that area. In fact, we could start seeing curb even on that stretch where they're doing subgrade work. Probably curb as early as sometime next week. Just a couple of heads up. I did not come with change orders for tonight. There'll be actually a handful of change orders for the next council meeting, and probably 3 of them that are most significant in terms of the city are some that we had already talked about. One is a precondition survey of the building we had some structural concerns for. That's a cost we're sharing with MnDOT. The asbestos vault removal. We knew there was pipe, but we weren't familiar that there was a vault that was going to have to be removed. So we had mentioned that at the last council meeting that was going to require some additional work and additional disposal costs and things like that. And so the prices they got seemed reasonable. And then the other is going to be the sand backfill related to that, the building that we had structural concerns about. Sand backfill can be done with a lot less or no vibration, and that was the concern that we had to be dealt with. And it's really going to be a cost that's going to land on the sewer and water, the utilities. So I guess that's in a nutshell, the update. I guess I don't know if there's any questions that any of you have, or if you've gotten comments from businesses or the public that I can address.
Chris, I have a quick one. I saw that the curbs are in over by Strike Force and whatnot, or the sidewalks. is that portion going to open up by the depot and Skuzacek meets? Are they going to move that up a block or so?
Yeah, it'll be open to, the next thing that has to take place is the lighting will have to go up. It's best that right now, they can get to the car lot, they can get to those businesses on that Mill Street. And then once the lighting gets installed and is put up, it'll be open to what we call a soft closure, so that they'll be able to get access to those buildings or those businesses. And then the next step will be once they get pavement down at 2nd Avenue, Northwest and Southwest by Wells Fargo, we'll actually move the opening to that point. But that'll actually probably be more than a month out at that point. The soft closure to get to the businesses probably in the next, if not next week, certainly by the week after. So it's coming soon.
Okay, and then Bruce, does that work with as far as the lighting and stuff? Is that something that you think you can get accomplished too, or?
Yeah, we've got it in the works. We've got a couple things. They're coming probably midweek or so to pull in the wire into the conduit. That was part of the contract. And so I'm kind of assuming that next week I'll be able to put crews on it. So Chris's timing with, I would say, a week or two here, kind of dependent. And then we also got some concrete sealing that needs to be done. And I want to make sure that we don't have that being sprayed on those new poles. So I have a little bit of concern about waiting, to open it a couple days early just to cause a mess later isn't worth it neither. So I need to be cautious of saying exactly when we commit to having them done.
Sure. Thank you.
What about, can you give, so the sand compaction is to deal with that building?
That's correct.
Yep. Are we gonna get an update with that? Or should that be addressed now, or?
I can give you a quick update on the building. Randy Kubich, building owner, had another review of the building done by a structural engineer. We got that report mid to late last week and went over it with Ted Lunder, a building official. It just confirmed the condition of the building being non-occupiable. And at this point, we're going to talk to the building owner again this week and see what his plan is for fixing the building or maybe demo. We don't know what he'll want to do with that. At this point, it is not occupiable still at this point, and that latest structural engineer just confirmed everything we had already known. But a survey prism was put up, last Monday or Tuesday, maybe, I think?
Tuesday, so they've been reading it, and then we're doing crack monitoring on the inside as well, so.
Yep, so we're continuing to monitor it, but nobody's in any danger. Nobody's in the building where we have the concerns at this point. So we just need the building owner to determine a path forward. If we don't get an answer, probably within a week, may have to choose to bring an item to the council to consider for raise and repair order to push that forward a little quicker than the owner might like to do, but we haven't crossed that bridge yet. So we'll be talking to the owner and see which route we'll need to take.
Okay, thank you.
So Ken, just quickly, the backside of the consignment lodge, is that still closed? It's not occupiable?
That's still closed. That portion of the building was built sometime in the late 1940s. And the way the trusses are built, tied in with the two-story portion of the building, is a potential collapse issue. And again, that was reconfirmed by the latest engineer again.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. And I want to note that I have talked to the owner of the consignment lodge to find out a new location to operate. They do have rather large space needs that they have to operate between 3,000 and 4,000 square feet. So haven't found anything yet. And they indicated they were going to possibly look into City of Lonsdale, seeing as she's from there. I would rather that not happen, but I don't know that we have anything that we can get her quickly into to continue operating here in New Prague, just based on space needs. But we have talked and gave her a number of options to consider. So.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for the city engineer Hearing none, I will move on to item number 2, the presentation. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
I'll move on to the presentation and acceptance of the 2020 annual financial audit. So who's going to start out with that?
I'll take that, Mayor Jurek and City Council. Brad Faldesack and Aaron instead of Abdu Eichenmeyer are here with us today to present to you the audited findings as it pertains to the general fund, other governmental funds, and the enterprise funds in a PowerPoint presentation. At the conclusion of the presentation, the city will be asked to accept the 2020 annual financial report. So with that, Aaron, are you on?
I am. Yeah.
But we're both on, yep.
Brad will start us off tonight.
Okay.
So thanks, Patty, and thank Honorable Mayor and council members. Like Patty said, we are here to present. So I have the presentation in front of you for the 2020 financial statements. So on the next slide, we have just the outline of what we're going to be talking about. So I'll go through the auditor's opinion and our responsibility in performing the audit. We'll talk about the general fund results, other governmental funds, enterprise, and then at the end we have a series of ratios where we compare your city in specific areas compared to other cities within the county, as well as other cities of similar size across the state of Minnesota. So next slide. So getting into it, our responsibility in performing the audit, that is to give an opinion on your financial statements in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. To arrive at that opinion, we'll look at your internal controls and to figure or decide where we're going to concentrate our tests to determine the balance, if the balances are materially stated accurately in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. Looking at this internal controls, if we see something in there that we feel should be brought to your attention, that maybe is a higher risk, not necessarily that we found anything that's wrong, but if it's a higher risk of either theft or misstatement, then we bring that to you in as a finding in the report. So getting back to our responsibilities, we are issuing a unmodified or a clean opinion on your financials. So that's what you're looking for when we have a financial statement audited. It's saying that we believe everything in the report is stated materially accurate. This year, we also had to do an additional audit. It's a compliance audit on your federal awards. We call it a single audit. If you spend more than $750,000 of federal money in any calendar or any fiscal year, you're required, the federal government requires a separate compliance audit on those federal dollars. So in 2020, you spent just about $3.1 million of federal money. Some of that came with the CARES money, with about $600,000 in the CARES pandemic funds you received, and then about $2.5 million of transportation dollars that you used for the street project this past year. So we're not required to audit both of those. We do look at the expenditures in the CARES money. However, the $2.5 million is the program that we concentrated on and did all our compliance testing over that program. So if there was any compliance issues that we found as far as what the federal government requires us to test, we show those as a finding in the report. We are not reporting any compliance findings over the federal programs this year. So in the coming years, you potentially may have other single audits just within other money coming out for the America Rescue Plan money. But again, if it's based on how much you spend in any given year, not necessarily how much money you receive in any given year. The state auditor's office, Minnesota State Auditor's Office, requires us also to go through a series of checklists related to compliance over Minnesota state statutes that they require us to test as part of our financial statement audit. So again, we go through those series of checklists on an annual basis, looking at items like where you deposit your money, how you're investing your money, if you're issuing any bonds, making sure you're following the specific state statutes and following those requirements. So again, with those, looking at the state statute requirements, we're not reporting any findings related to state statutes either. So clean there as well. So getting on the next slide, getting back to the internal controls, we do have one finding over internal controls, and that a lot of it's based on just the number of staff in the that are processing the accounting transactions. Given the number of staff, there's no probably perfect level of segregation of duties that you can have within these categories. So we do have the finding listed in the financial statements at the end. But this is a finding we have reported in the past. And again, it's not something that we found any wrongdoing. It's just brought to your attention to make sure you're looking at things, your monthly financial reports or quarterly financial reports. And if there's something that looks odd or something unexpected, just make sure you're asking questions and getting good answers with those items. So,
Brad, if I could interrupt, this is Mike Johnson. Sean, if you'd let us hire another 6 employees, we might be able to get rid of this finding.
I'll leave that for another meeting. But
nice job, Mike. Way to put me on the line like that.
Shot across the bow.
You can see it's not inexpensive to try to get rid of it.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So with that, I'll certainly take any questions on that. Otherwise, Aaron's going to go through the rest of it and get more into the details as far as the actual fund results throughout the within the financials. So you can take it away, Aaron.
All right. Well, good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you so much for having us tonight. Like Brad said, I'm going to dig into a little bit more of the numbers. What I'll be going through is going to be pretty high overview. We'd like to keep it as simple as possible, showing a lot of graphs and trends and all of that, just to make it as easy to understand. We understand that looking at the audit report can be a little bit overwhelming. So we try to break it down as best as possible in these graphs and slides coming up. So if at any time anyone has any questions, please don't hesitate just to interrupt me and ask at any time. So we'll start by taking a look at your general fund. So you can see the red line is your budget. So kind of looking at, over the last 6 years, what's your budget look like? What's the trend? So you can just see kind of steady gradual increase and pretty minimal increase going into 2021. And then your fund balance policy and your unassigned fund balance or your available fund balance is right at that 50%. And so what the city does each year is kind of takes a look at, okay, how the general fund results turn out. And then anything over that 50% is basically assigned out or earmarked for future, most of it's for future project costs and future improvements there. But so you're right at that 50% as for unavailable or unassigned or available fund balance. Then taking a look here at your general fund budget to actual. So you can see your revenues came in at about 134,000 over budget. Most of this relates to license and permits. And then your expenditures were under by about $57,000 there, but overall nothing too major looking at total expenditures for sure. So you will see the overall net change in your general fund is $375,000. So keep in mind that the city did receive into the general fund $395,000, which was used for a lot of public safety costs there. And so this fund balance, a lot of it was assigned for future improvements that just weren't, the timing of it wasn't able to get done, and that so there will be a lot of improvements that are assigned going forward and available funds for future capital needs and that. But yeah, most of that relates to the CARES. So you had part of it go to the general fund and then part of it go to those loans to businesses or grants to businesses, not loans, sorry, grants to businesses, economic development.
Aaron, this is Mike, and I'd add for the council's benefit, specifically what she's referring to would be the carryover decision to fund all of those improvements up in the council chambers. The second one would be for the in-car or the squad car cameras. The third one would be the funding for Jim, help me, the outfitting of the officers for the program with Scott County.
Mobile field force.
mobile field force. Patty, are those the three major ones that capture in the carryover, or is there something I'm missing?
No, and then the televising and all the technology upstairs.
Yeah, that was the first one I said.
Oh, I'm sorry. Then I don't know. I think that's it.
But I think those are the three major ones. And so that's why, since those monies weren't expended last year, that results in the increase in the fund balance, but that'll show a decrease in this year's audit.
Yeah, and keep in mind the city will be receiving additional funds with the American Recovery Plan. A lot of that is up in the air right now. The League of Minnesota Cities had a webinar scheduled for tomorrow, and that got canceled just because there's not a lot of information out there, updated information. So we will keep the city updated with any information that we hear and whatnot. But you do have, with the American Recovery Plan, the city will have a longer period of time to spend the money, which will be nice. You won't feel like you have to rush into these decisions. Like Mike said, there was that timing issue from when the city could do things and when the money had to be spent. So hopefully with the next round of funding, you'll have a little bit more time to really think about how you guys want to spend the money. Then we'll take a look at your general fund revenues by type. So you can see where a majority of the city's revenues come from, obviously our taxes and intergovernmental. So you can see taxes just kind of the steady increase, nothing major. And keep in mind, this does include all taxes. So it's your current taxes plus delinquent taxes, and also does include franchise fees as well. Your intergovernmental with that did increase this year due to the CARES Act. So due to that extra revenue received in the general fund. Then looking at your expenditures over the past 3 years and the trends there. So slight increases, public safety gradually increases. That's pretty typical for what we see at other cities too. That's pretty typical trend is that usually increases a little bit more than the other departments. And keep in mind that this does include police, fire, building inspection, emergency management, and animal control. So that's everything included under the public safety bucket. So. And that other amount there, that includes capital items. So that will vary depending on capital expenses in the general fund during the year. That does vary from year to year.
What are transfers out?
So transfers out, those would be transfers out to other funds. So let me,
Okay.
I can show you. Let's see.
The one primary one is the transfer to the golf course out of the general fund to fund monies for principal and interest payments in the golf fund.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so we can see here what makes up that. Make my screen so you can see here transfer out to a transfer out to the electric and then to the non-major enterprise, which is that golf fund. So
Okay, thanks.
Aaron, isn't that the transfer in that you're showing there? That was money coming into the general fund that's transferred in the 40,000 from the electric fund.
Yep, here's the transfer in. So yeah, it's a little, so transfers in up here and then transfers out of the general fund and into the electric and into this non-major is the golf fund. So if you read it this way, the transfer out of the general fund is 144,000 and the transfer into the general fund is 40,000. So you'll see there that transfer out of 144 and 40,000. Any other questions related to that?
No, thanks.
All right, now looking at special revenue funds. So special revenue funds have a specific purpose or a specific stream of revenue coming in to help fund that fund. So you can look at the various special revenue funds that you have. Really no major changes between any of them this year. They all stayed pretty consistent when looking at the fund balance there. Then taking a look at your capital projects funds, you can see kind of the various funds that you have out there. Just a couple of things that we wanted to point out for your Highway 19 project. This will be funded with bonding from 2021, so that deficit will be eliminated with future bonding, or I guess this year bonding. We're always a year behind, so this year bonding, that deficit will be taken care of there. And then you also have one other fund that I just wanted to point out, just with the dollar amount, trunk sewer fund. So this is funds set aside for future expansion for the trunk lines. So just kind of keep that in mind, that there is a designated purpose for that fund and saving for future improvements there. Then we'll take a look at your debt service funds. So this is just your governmental funds. So this is bonds that will be paid back by either tax levies or special assessments there. So you can kind of see the outstanding debt, the total assets, and then the maturity date as well. On the next slide, it will show you. So here you can see this graph is important when you're looking at future capital planning and when you're going to issue debt. So the city just issued debt in 2020, and then we'll have another one in 2021. So that will help even out some of these that looks like it drops. But the 2021 bond will increase that there, but really helpful when looking at planning for future capital needs and future issuing of debt. So now we're going to take a look at enterprise funds. So enterprise funds operate a little bit differently. You know, the enterprise funds really should operate like a business, that what you charge for the services should be able to cover all the expenses, plus also maintain their capital needs. So you can see the first, the top graph here compares your operating receipts to your operating disbursements and your debt payments. So ideally you have the blue bar covering the gray and the green bar. So as you can see with the water fund, over the past 4 years, it has consistently covered those expenses, which is what you're looking for in the enterprise fund. So anytime those start to creep closer together, it's really time to look to, do your rates need to be reevaluated, and that to help support the funds. Then looking at the bottom graph, so this looks at your actual cash balance there. So you can see over the past 4 years what the trend is, and then the green bar looks at, the green line looks at kind of a target cash. This is just something we at AEM kind of developed for minimum target cash, is 50% of operating expenses plus next year's debt service payments. So just kind of gives you an idea of maybe where you wouldn't want that cash to maybe go much lower than that. And then really anything above that is for capital purposes. So kind of looking at when Patty and Mike and I looked at this, really making sure that, in the next coming years, in some of these enterprise funds, there's quite a bit, your debt service payments do increase. So looking that it's kind of setting you up to not have huge spikes in your rate increases in that. So a lot of that will be used for future debt service payments and also future capital needs as well. Then moving on to your sewer fund. So you can see here, you can see the blue bar has pretty consistently covered your operating expenses and your debt payments, and your actual cash kind of right around that general area over the past 4 years. No major changes there. So, and the decrease was related to the decrease this year was related to biosolids project of about $680,000 that was internally funded with that fund. So yeah, if like I said with the water fund, the cash above that green line is really going to be used for future debt payments and future capital needs there. Like you saw with the the biosolids, that's $680,000. Repairs and maintenance and capital items are very expensive, so it can eat away at those reserves pretty fast. So. Then taking a look at the electric fund. So you can see here, same as the other ones, you know, your operating revenues and receipts are covering your disbursements and very minor debt payments, mostly just disbursements there. But you could see kind of you're right at, there was some money received from SIMPA that in 2020 that related to some of that increase there for 2020. Then taking a look at the Gulf Fund. So as you can see, you know, in past years, that gray and green bar have been over the blue bar, but this year you did break even there. So that's good news for the golf course that you had that break even point this year. And then you can see in the bottom graph, the cash did increase there. So you can see it's on a good trend. So, you know, a lot of that was related to COVID, people getting outside, nice weather, and whatnot. So I think they made some changes at the course as well that helped increase some of that cash flow. So good news for the golf course this year. Then looking at your ambulance fund, so you can see here, we're looking at pretty minor dollar amounts. And you look at 15,000 for operating receipts and about 10,000, less than 10,000 for disbursement. So just keep that in mind when looking at this. It's quite a bit different scale when you're looking compared to the other enterprise funds. But you can see minimum target balance is pretty low here and have maintained a pretty steady cash flow in the ambulance fund. Been looking at stormwater as well, really having, being able to cover your expenses there, steady increase in cash, and having that available for future capital needs. So then you don't have to be as reliant on issuing debt at a certain time, and that you have a little bit more wiggle room when you can help internally fund projects too. Now this takes a look at your total cash and investments between all the funds over the past 3 years. So you can see you're at 28.1 million overall between all the funds there. And you can see compared to last year, the 27.6 million. So then we'll take a look. So now we'll take a look at some key ratios. So what we do is we compare the city of New Prague to class 4 cities, so cities similar in size, and then also cities in Scott County. I always say there are never 2 cities that are exactly the same. So it just gives you an idea from where your city sits compared to other cities similar in size and cities similar in area. So keep that in mind when you're looking at these graphs. Just kind of gives you an idea of what how the city compares. So you can see tax rate is kind of right in line there and has been very consistent and actually kind of trending down there over the past 4 years there. And taxes per capita, same thing, very flat over the past 4 years and right in line with the other 2 groups as well. Then looking at your debt service, so you can see the first graph, the long-term debt per capita is all the city's debt. So this is including enterprise debt and governmental debt. So a big contributor, you can see that this does look or is quite a bit higher compared to the class 4 cities and cities in Scott County. A lot of that's due to debt in the wastewater plant fund of 25 million related to the PFA loan from 2008. So that obviously is a lot of debt there. So without that, it would be pretty comparable. But yeah, with that, it does increase quite a bit. But you can see your enterprise funds, you're able to support those payments and that with the charges there. So nothing to be super alarmed of. I think you guys have done a really good job planning and how you're supporting all those payments. The next graph looks at your debt service expenditures as a percent of current expenditures. So this is just your governmental debt. So debt that's paid back by your taxes and special assessments. So you can see you're kind of right in line with the cities in Scott County there for your debt service expenditures. I don't know why the Scott County decreased so dramatically from 18 to 19. That I'm not quite sure what caused that decrease, but Otherwise, you're pretty steady there. And like we saw with the taxes, no major spikes, no major changes. So you're really able to support those debt payments. Then looking at your current expenditures per capita. So this takes a look at basically your general fund operating expenses for the city. So you can see really over the past 3 years, you've been very consistent there and kind of right in line with cities in Scott County. So, and lower than class 4 cities.
Aaron, this
Yeah.
is Mike. I should
Yep.
point out for the council's benefit that fourth class cities are those cities less than 10,000 population.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. So
So-
less than 10,000. It does include a wide variety of cities. Yes. Yep. That's a huge range when you look at a city 3,000 to 10,000. Yes, it's a big range that the state classifies as class 4 cities. Yep.
But I just wanted them to make
But
sure
no.
that we're talking about fourth class. What does that really mean, and what is that population range that's compared in that category?
Yeah. Thank you, Mike, for pointing that out. So the second graph looks at capital expenditures. This one is tough because it really varies on how just when the capital needs take place, but just kind of gives you an idea of what other cities are spending in capital and that. But all depends on timing and when capital items are needed. So then this takes a look at your expenditures by program per capita and really compares them. So you can see there's really not a whole lot. I mean, the city's on kind of the lower end compared to the other two for most of them. I've talked about capital outlay is tough because that just depends on kind of your capital plan and that, which I think you guys do a good job of planning for your future capital needs and having a good grasp on your future capital needs coming up. And then you can see below the revenue side, so per capita revenues by source, and comparing there. And the intergovernmental, that's going to be higher because we're comparing 2019 data. We don't have 2020 data. So next year you'll see a spike in the intergovernmental with the CARES too for the other populations. But yeah, we don't have 2020 data yet. So then we'll take a look at your enterprise debt service coverage. So what this is that basically the higher the percentage, the better. So it's how many times your operating kind of net profit could cover your debt service payments. So you can see you're at the 150, and then the water did have that increase and that your debt payments remain steady. A lot of it was increased due to charges for services this year. And your sewer fund has been very steady over the past 4 years, right in line. So, does anyone have any questions or want to dig into any details further?
Gwen, this is Bruce. I have a question, if you can hear me.
Yep.
Okay, getting back to the golf course on the cash fund, golf fund page 16, and it doesn't have to do with just the golf course, but just an understanding or trying to understand how this is put together. The number there reflects just the undesignated part, and so with this fund and other funds, you're not including the cash held with fiscal agent. And I'm assuming that means the money that's held by the city, but that's really for those funds. Am I understanding that correctly?
So are you looking at, let's see, let me go here.
So as an example, on page 16, it shows 126,938.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the number that's shown as undesignated.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's another cash held with fiscal agent of $161,068 for the golf course. So it's not just with the golf course, but I'm just wondering, I'm assuming that 161,000 is money that's either collected for the golf course or in transit kind of money. Am I understanding that correctly?
So what that is, so you'll see that in a variety of or in multiple funds. What it is it relates to the city issued a 2020 refunding bond. They issued it right at the end of November, but the bond wasn't paid off until January or February in 2021. So we debated on how we were going to show that, if we were going to show the additional cash held with fiscal agent, but we didn't show the cash held with fiscal agent, and we also didn't show basically the payoff of the old bonds with that, if that's kind of confusing. But you basically can just ignore that and pretend that that cash isn't there, because actually at this point the cash isn't there at the city. It has been refunded, the old bond and that. So you just got a better interest rate on the new bond. So you saved on interest payments with issuing that 2020 refunding bond. But yes,
Okay.
so you'll see that in a variety. It will be in debt service funds, some enterprise funds, and that yeah, we did not include in the presentation because we felt like that was a little misleading, having that information. And then you have these swings and spikes and debt payments and all of that when it's really just paying off an old bond and issuing a new one. There's really no change other than the city saves money on interest costs because you could get a better interest rate in 2020.
Okay, I think I get that. I was wondering why that money wasn't included for the benefit of the grant. And that makes sense. I was thinking it was money like for memberships or cash in transit or something like that, but it's nothing. It's with the bond transaction. So I guess I get that. That's good. And then secondly, I guess I had just a general question. I'm not sure I understand even how to ask it, but when you talk about the federal compliance with federal awards and you did that special opinion for that purpose, and then there's items cited that are significant deficiencies, but they're not material, which are the ones that you described before and the ones we've had in other years. But I'm just trying to get an understanding. Does this report get sent to the federal government and they circle back and say this is okay, or what's this about, or do we hear anything back? And I'm trying to get a sense for what's the margin in error on these significant deficiencies? When do they become material that we have to worry about awards or not qualifying for DOT money? Or can you talk about that a little bit, or really?
Yeah, so I think that's a really good question. You bring up a good point. You know, the internal control finding has been around for many years, and it's due to lack of staff. You know, I always say just because you have a lack of internal controls does not mean there are controls in place. The city has lots of controls in place to help prevent and eliminate as much risk as possible. But there is risk still there when you don't have the ideal controls in place. We feel like we talk through the controls that are in place with the city every year, and the city's continuously looking to improve and add controls in place. So at this time, we don't feel like there is a reason that it would get moved up to a material weakness. But yes, this does get, so as part of the single audit, this does get submitted to the federal government. They're looking for this information. I don't know if I've never seen that a city's been notified. I mean, we have cities that have material weaknesses, that could play into, if a bond rating maybe, looking at, the controls over the city. Brad, have you come across any city that's gotten in more trouble with like a material weakness from any local government or from any like state or federal governments?
I have not seen anything like that. So the significant deficiency, even though it's called significant, it sounds, and it is really important. I shouldn't diminish the importance of it. But it's not the highest level of deficiency would be the material weakness, which this is not. So significant deficiency is that there's risk there. It's just, there are some mitigating factors that limit the risk. Material weakness would be something that there's a high degree of opportunity or a high degree of likelihood that there may be a misstatement in the financial statements and we didn't catch it. But as far as reporting and the response back from the federal government, we do submit this, like Aaron said, And then if you have a single audit or a report on federal awards next year, we do have to follow up and report, were there any changes with the prior year findings? So we would report an update to them. So if you potentially don't have a single audit the following fiscal year, they don't, I have not seen the federal government follow up on any of these findings, even if there were a material weakness. Now, if you did have a material weakness, which that would be potential where they would follow up, especially if there was a new, if you're applying for the same grant or something in the future, they may follow up and say, has anything been done to correct this issue? But typically not with the significant deficiency. Or if there was, if we reported theft or something with the federal awards, that would be something they certainly would follow up on.
Okay, well, I think that gives me peace of mind, especially since we recorded what you just said. So we should be able to rely on that.
No, yeah, you can.
This is Mike's.
But this statement basically tells us we did everything right with the CARES money. We shouldn't, that kind of went over. Okay. Thank you. That's all I got.
Mike.
In addition to submitting the single audit to the feds, we also submit our annual audit to the state of Minnesota as required. And just to answer an additional part of Bruce's question, there has never been anything in our audits that have been taken to task or has impacted us in our rating reviews with the outside rating agencies.
Good.
The specific finding we're talking about here, the significant deficiency, a city your size, you'll typically find that in a city your size. If you look at across the state of other cities of similar size, the class 4 cities, you probably find this similar finding in 75% of them, 70% of them. So it's nothing unusual, but it is something we need to point out.
This is Mike again. I've worked in 5 cities over my nearly 39 years in city management, and every one of those cities has had these same kind of findings addressed in its audit report. So they don't go away very easily.
Aaron, I have
Any
a
other
quick question. Yeah. Can I go, Dwayne?
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry.
Okay. Aaron, I know you said it was just kind of a snapshot in time, but the key city ratios on page 22, and maybe Mike, you can refresh my memory too. It seems like, you know, we were trending in 17 and 18 well below Scott County and some of the other cities on our capital expenditures per capita, and then they shot up in 19 and in 20, but and actually was greater than the rest of Scott County. And it looks like a pretty significant jump from, you know, 125 in 17, 140 in 18 up to 524. Can you recall, Mike, what precipitated that? And then I guess my question to Aaron is would we be better off of trying to mitigate those highs and lows, or is this typical for what you see from other cities that they might have a year or two of big spikes and then drop back down, or is there any advantage of trying to equal that out a little bit?
My response would be, and I can't think right offhand, well, we know in 2020 that our big jumper that keeping it that level is the work from the highway project. Yep. And the CARES Act funding. 2019, I can't specifically recall right offhand. Oh, excuse me, I can think of right now a big one on that. That was the rework of the County Road 37 project with Scott County.
Oh, sure.
As well as city work with all of the street mill and overlay that we did throughout the community, that we had a big year with that one because of taking back County Road 37 as a city street and doing all of that work. So we did that in 2019. And so it's, you know, it's not something that you can really look at trying to say you want to level that off or have that at a certain level. It's really dependent upon the activity. When we get done with the 2021 highway project, we'll see a fairly significant reduction in this unless we replace that with other capital road and street utility construction projects. So that's really indicative of asking and understanding what are the capital expenditures that are occurring within those fiscal years. And yes, you're going to have ups and downs. And so it's just a snapshot in comparison, but it's not intended to be anything more than, okay, New Prague in 19 and 20 and likely in 21 have a significant amount of capital construction going on. And it's really not intended to measure or show anything to be able to develop any specific comparisons other than here's kind of what's happening on the capital construction front. So I don't think it's something that you should necessarily read into, and it's not necessarily good or bad. It's just reflective of what are we actually doing.
That makes sense, Mike. I couldn't recall the County Road 37 in 19 when it took that big jump. So that explains a lot. So thank you.
I almost couldn't remember. Thank goodness that something, the light bulb kicked on that I could remember what that was, that, you know, that was a fun year. And if we had Glenn back with us, I know he would have recalled that right away. But yeah, it was predominantly the 37 project with the grant and all the work we did with Scott County on the turnback.
Yeah, I would just add, I mean, like I said, capital is really tough to compare when you're looking at your city compared to others. But it really comes back to how is your city planning for future capital needs and how are you funding that? I think if you have a good plan in place and how you're funding that and that's really more of what you should be concerned about versus comparing, because every city has such different capital needs and timing of when their capital needs take place. So I think it really comes down to just what's your future capital plan look like, and do you have a good understanding of it?
Thank you, Aaron.
Are there any other questions for our auditors? Okay, with that, I would take a motion to approve this 2020 audit, annual audit.
I'll move to approve.
Okay, Rick made the motion. Is there a second?
Second, Bruce.
Yep, Bruce made the second. Any other discussion?
I would just like to say a huge thank you to Mike. It's been great working with him all these years, and we wish you nothing but the best in your retirement. And also a huge thank you to Patty and all of her staff. Obviously, you know, we did the audit remote this year and we felt like it went really well, especially with the single audit piece of it, adding basically a whole nother audit in there. So really huge thank you to city staff on being just always getting us information timely and that, and you know, they really do a really good job. We prepare very few journal entries for this audit, which is awesome. They do a really good job accounting throughout the year and organization and tracking things and whatnot. So huge thank you to staff, and it's been great working with you over the years, Mike. So thank you for the opportunity to work with the city of New Prague.
Thanks, Aaron.
Nice job, Patty.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thanks,
with
Aaron.
that,
Thanks, Brad.
Thank you.
Bruce, how do you vote?
Thanks, Aaron and Brad, and I vote aye.
Sean?
Aye.
Maggie?
Also, a big thanks to Patty and staff and Mike, and I vote aye.
Thank you.
Rick?
Aye, thank you, guys.
And Jerick votes aye. Yes, thank you, everybody. I know from living with the finance director that this time of the year is not fun. She always complains about the auditors.
That's a lie.
That's a lie.
No, I
right?
know that's a lie, but I just wanted to see if you're listening. So, yes, Mike.
Dwayne, I would just echo Aaron's comments that, you know, getting through the audit and having it clean and everything pulled together, that Patty's leadership in this area, along with the accounting staff and everybody, it's a big project that starts at the end of the year and culminates with what you see in here tonight. But there's many, many hours spent behind the scenes and during the course of the year to make sure that we come up with a clean audit. And it is what we have to use when we present to the bond firms. And when you take a look at the financial planning that we try to do and the fund balances and the debt service and all of that, with the coordination and what we do in those areas ultimately reflects back on their review and assessment of the city. And I think as Patty and I work in this area, that we take great pride in making sure that this comes out as clean as it does, and that there are good answers and information to help reflect on where we stand on an annual financial basis, as well as the look ahead. And you see that when you see the 10-year look ahead, when we do the budget preparations, is we're already taking this audit information and trying to look ahead, like I said, to 5 to 10 years to kind of know where we're going to stand to make sure that that planning is in place for the city.
Good. Okay, thanks guys again. And I guess the motion carried. I forgot to announce that, but the motion carried. And thanks again, and we'll move on to number 3, the position classification and compensation study report by Leah Davis.
Yes. Good evening, Mayor and
Hi.
Council. Can you hear me?
Yes.
You'll have to forgive me. My allergies have officially set in. So I have very much a man voice for the meeting tonight. So I hope you can stand to listen to me. But so yes, thank you for inviting me here tonight to do sort of a high-level overview of our compensation and position classification study, as well as the supplemental reporting that was prepared in response or in follow-up to our workshop, comp and class workshop that was held on March 9th. So hopefully you've had a chance to review the materials that were provided in the with your packets for tonight. There's a lot of information in there. So out of respect for time, and because we really did spend a lot of good time digging into that initial report, and I'm happy to revisit any questions that anyone has on that initial report. Maybe what I'll do right now is just a high-level summary of the supplemental report that was provided. And then tonight we'll have open discussion. I'm happy to answer any questions. And then the goal would be for the council to put the report and implementation to vote. So happy to help with any questions to help get that accomplished. So again, the full report that you have in your hand is the report that you received prior to the workshop. There was one minor change to the report, and that was just that we scored the union police positions, so the police officer and the police sergeant positions, and for some reasons those didn't make those point suggestions did not make it into table 1 of that preliminary or that first report that we reviewed during the workshop. They have been included now. So that is the only edit to the report that you received for the workshop. Following that workshop with the Utilities Commission and the council, I was given directive, or Workforce Solutions was given directive, to go back and spend a little more time doing some analysis related specifically to the line worker positions within the city. So currently you have an apprentice lineman and a journeyman lineman position. And so the supplemental report really provides a high-level overview, and I can share my screen if that's helpful. I don't have the ability to present. Now I do. Thank you, whoever made the magic happen in the background. Can you see my supplemental report? Yes, okay. So you should be able to see, I kind of outlined in the supplemental report sort of where or why we proceeded with this additional analysis. And really what we ended up doing was trying to find out if there's a way where, in recognizing that we have some very unique market pressure with those lineman positions, both in the fact that you're competing directly with private employers, co-op employers, and even just geographically, you're in the city of New Prague is in very close proximity to some large private co-op employers. So that creates a really unique challenge for New Prague specifically. I'll also say I've worked with several government employers with utilities departments, and these linemen, specifically the licensed journeyman lineman positions, the challenges you're facing are consistent with every organization that I am speaking with. So large, small, throughout the state. So you're not, it's a challenge, but I would say it's pretty consistent with what the rest of your peers are seeing. So the goal of the additional testing was to go out and to see, can we pull out those lineman positions, those line worker positions, provide a scale that is consistent and relatively similar to the rest of the proposed organization's comp and class pay scale, while still hitting a top end pay within that scale that is more competitive with the market. When we did a private market, let me back up. So if we just kind of walk through the conclusions, one of the things we were worried about was if we did that, would we fall out of line with Minnesota pay equity compliance requirements? And so that was, we really needed to go and sort of like run a few scenarios, run that testing against Minnesota pay equity compliance, and even look out ahead and say, if we had some other staffing changes, if you have, I mean, you do have some retirements coming up in, you know, female weighted positions, and if we replaced those individuals with male candidates, might that have any issues? You also have negotiations coming up with your police unions, which are typically male dominated positions. So we wanted to be considerate of all those factors to make sure that whatever we proposed had longevity within the city, and that we were anticipating as best we could any pay equity concerns that might arise. So with all of that, the really good news was we were able to come up with some pretty good recommendations and solutions that I think better meet some of the needs related to the utilities department and that line, those line worker positions. So our recommendation, and you'll see in the table 1S included in the supplemental report, we had a couple recommendations. One was to say, right now you have two positions, an apprentice position and a line worker, journeyman lineman position. And after some conversation, it really became clear that it's reasonable to combine those two positions to a single line worker position. That's pretty consistent with what I've seen in a lot of other cities as well. And what that does is it helps better align both the length of time that your apprentice never really makes it to the top step before being moved into that journeyman position. They're usually spending, I don't know, I mean, Bruce, you can attest to this, but 2 to 3 years as an apprentice, and then they're moving right into that journeyman position anyway. So it's very rare that anyone's sort of making it through that range to begin with. And so consolidating them just kind of made sense. So I think that's one consideration. The second thing then was to pull out, so currently the journeyman line worker, journeyman lineman position was at a grade, oh gosh, now I believe they were a grade 13.
Yes.
It's not in the supplemental report, so my apologies. They were in a grade 13. And what we did was we pulled out the LW. So you can see in your, let me rotate this, in the proposed scale, at the very bottom, we've basically pulled the line worker positions out and given them a designated grade. So grade LW is the same minimum starting step pay as that grade 13. But step 11 So that $50.71, which is relatively consistent, just a bit above our private market data for these positions. It's just a wider spread from the min to the max, so that it gives opportunity for individuals in those positions to, at some point when they reach that top step, be in line with the market maximum pay for that position. And in doing that, we did not run into any pay equity concerns that really threw red flags. And again, we ran the testing with a lot of other considerations for other positions, and ran some scenarios just to make sure that we weren't running afoul there. Now, that's not to say that the city, if you adopted this, that you wouldn't want to do just some regular testing. And so those are conversations I've had with Patty and the city staff, that whenever you're making you know, significant position changes, or maybe there's a lot of turnover in any specific position, this is something you just want to do some double checking. And it's a simple thing to do by logging into Minnesota Pay Equity and running some testing. So the other thing that we recommended and that I ran testing to make sure was possible would be, we talked a little bit about the need for fairly rapid pay progression for the line worker position, in that many of these journeyman, licensed journeyman linemen are reaching that maximum step much faster than in your scale 10 years. And so the supplemental report lays out a recommendation to allow, with very structured testing and licensure sort of criteria, allow for biannual step increases. So that's another piece that you need to develop the structure around it. But there, in that position specifically, are some real clear-cut testing and examination and licensure requirements that are happening throughout the year. And so it would make sense to be able to apply those biannual steps in a consistent and logical way. And so that grade then, while it still has the same 11 steps, would actually reach max step within 5 years, rather than 10 that the other positions are focused on, if those steps are being awarded, you know, entirely based on length of service. And then it is worth noting that in order to increase that top step for the line worker position, the percentage increase between steps was also increased a bit. So the overall step and grade table has a 2.75% increase between steps. The line worker grade, however, runs at 3.65% between steps in order to achieve that marketable max step. And then finally, just as we've talked about for the overall city and the overall step and grade plan that's being proposed, it's just worth noting that if the performance-based bonus steps were adopted, that would need to be done in conjunction with a plan to develop a well-developed, communicated, structured performance evaluation process that employees understood, managers and supervisors understood and could apply consistently, and that would make those 3 additional bonus and performance steps attainable for your highest performers within the organization. It's worth noting, you can adopt those bonus steps. Even today, those could be adopted, knowing that you're not ready to actually award them yet, that the performance and evaluation program would need to be developed first. So just keep that in mind. All right. So you can see the table there. And so there's really, on the last page, it gives you sort of a list of some of the items that the council will want to take into consideration and consider adopting. So, any questions?
Yeah, I got one.
Yes.
Okay,
Bruce, is this pretty much satisfactory with your needs?
Yeah, Rick, it does exactly what I needed to do. I need to land between that $49 and $51 range to be competitive, and this will do it. I'm really comfortable with this.
Good. All right. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, hearing none. I would I would entertain a motion to adopt this report. Yep.
Wait,
Yeah,
I got
Bruce.
a
I guess I was gonna make a comment. I know, Leah, you mentioned that we could adopt or you could approve the bonus performance step. To me, that seems a little awkward to approve something when we don't know what it is yet. And to me, I approve of the concept. I agree with it, but I also know how hard it would be to create. And so I'm wondering if we could consider just approving the schedule contingent upon approving the actual program later. I think that the council should be involved in approving the actual program instead of just saying we're going to do it as soon as it's created. So I feel uncomfortable with the city not being involved in the final outcome of it.
No, thank you for bringing that up. No, I would agree that any sort of formal performance management program and process and evaluation program would be something that would take council and city leadership involvement. Supervisors should have input into some of that criteria as well. So because any well done performance evaluation program needs to really closely align with your overall city performance philosophy, compensation philosophy. So I would agree. And in the conversations I've had with city leadership, they're crystal clear on the fact that we're not there yet. That program's not in place, and it would be an undertaking and an investment of time to get that developed. But there is interest in the ability to move in that direction and to have those bonus and performance-based steps available in the future once that program is better developed and defined, because it does really provide some good incentives for your highest performers that can help you retain those key employees. So agreed, you're not there, and it would include broad involvement from city leadership to get a program that everyone felt comfortable with.
I guess from my point of view, then I would consider or ask the city council members to consider crossing out the word implementation and putting the word schedule at the end of the sentence. We can add something like when approved or something like that if it's done at a later time. That's the second last bullet point on that recommendation.
I would agree with you, Bruce. I like that. I have another question, Lee. I'm trying to figure out this new schedule, and I'm comparing it to the other one that we were given on December 16th when we first started talking about this. And this was based on the 2021 pay scale that we were going to award the 2.75% cost of living increase.
Yep.
So that scale where I have everybody listed here only has 17 steps. This one has 19. The points that were awarded in each step seem a little different or have changed some from the other one. And I guess just for an example, if this is adopted today, and let's just use probably the easiest one. Let's use Mike. He was a grade 17, and his points were sometimes the points are between 679 and 741, which varies from this grade 17. So which one should I be looking at?
Yeah.
If I go to step 9, which was the old formula, and then I look at step 9 here, based on a grade 17, or does Mike's go up to a grade 19? Is he considered the highest?
Yep. So
person?
the report you said dated in December, did that come from us?
Oh, no, this was from city staff.
But
I
the only
got a
draft
copy
report,
of their-
okay.
Because
So
yeah, I think
the only
John,
draft,
it should
Go
be
ahead.
the one from February
You broke
15th,
up there,
right?
didn't you?
Okay. So I think the report that we should be looking at and comparing was the one that was done on February 15th
yes.
that Leah provided to us.
Okay, so I'm looking at an older report, but it only a couple months difference. Was there a big change between that first report on the 15th? You hadn't even started the study yet, did you? And this copy of the grades and the point system from December 16th that we were using to determine a 2.75% cost of living increase for 2021.
Sean, I believe you're looking at our old wage schedule.
Okay.
What?
Doesn't include this.
This has nothing to do
This says
with
city.
it's the city's old wage schedule that we were using. When we hired Leah Davis to come in and look at all of our data, she went with a completely different program, which is the Hayes program. And that's what you're looking at right now, the February and now this schedule. So you're trying to compare two different schedules and you can't really.
From two different companies.
Okay.
That's correct.
It is, okay, all right. Well, I just knew this one was dated. It says City of New Prague 2021 pay schedule. This was what we were gonna adopt back on December 16th and include your 2.75%.
And that's what you did. Yep, and that's what you did.
Right. Okay.
Oh,
So
yes. Now I understand where we're at. Got it. Yes.
So this copy of the 216 of the 2021, or wherever it is, 2021, this is what it was going to be until we got this new study. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, all right. So I guess what I'm trying to figure out is where, and I just picked Mike just for no reason other than it's probably the easiest one to follow just because it would be the top one. Does that mean from the one I got in December where Mike was a class 17, is he going to be rated at a class 19 now at the highest level like he was on the December 16th?
Yes, yes, but it's important to remember that the grade levels, that doesn't mean he's getting 2 grade levels worth of increases by being moved. The whole structure and the way that step and grade table calculates, both in the increases from grade to grade, the step increases remain the same, but the whole structure is new. So yes, he will be placed in a grade 19, but it doesn't affect the range of pay inappropriately, if that makes any sense. So that position's still in line with the market. What we actually did was by increasing the number of grades, it allows space for the city to grow and add additional positions as they sort of get, as you grow, you end up at times having to build in new positions. And so it just provides more breathing room within the compensation model.
Okay, all right, that makes sense. So let me ask you this then. If, based on your new grading scenario, like here, Mike capped out at step 9. Now you have 11 steps plus 3 bonus ones potentially, but we're going to deal with the bonus ones later. So given Mike's tenure here since 2008, he would be at a step 11. Is that correct?
No.
On
nope.
your new grade scale?
Nope. So it depends. The answer is it depends. So in order to adopt and implement the proposed table, every employee, so individual employee, would move to the step closest to their current rate of pay without going backward. So if Mike is at a step 9 on your current table, he's going to move to the step within grade 19 that is closest to his current rate of pay without going backwards.
I see. Okay, that explains it a little bit more. So that would probably put him at. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Sean. I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say, so that's actually gonna put him down, if I'm reading the 26th or the December 16th right, that would put him somewhere at he would start at a grade or a standard step of 5 from where he was at 9 before.
Well,
Because he wouldn't go back in hourly pay, and that would be, so number 5 would be where he would land based on, if this is correct, based on the increase with the 2.75% cost of living in 2021.
Correct.
Okay.
And Sean, if I can speak up here, that I've already told Patty that in light of where I sit with the short amount of time that's left in my tenure, is it would be my intent to not accept anything and to leave me exactly where I am for the remainder of my tenure here in New Prague, and let you deal with it when you hire the next person. So I don't intend to accept any movement or pay increase in the remaining few months that I have left at hand.
Oh, no, Mike, and I don't want you to think that I just use you as an example just because it just seemed to be easier to explain the top position as opposed to picking one in the middle. And this isn't, I think if we approve this, I'm fine with you getting the whatever you're at for the last few months of your career. I'm not opposed to that at all. I guess what I was looking at and what I was trying to figure out with this new schedule is what this is going to do to the overall budget. And I know you and I talked before the meeting tonight when you called just to see if I had any questions about the packet that had come. And I think you said that this will roughly hit our budget this year, given all the changes, of about 34,000, I think you said, if I'm not mistaken, or 36,000. So June through December, another 35,000 in payroll expense.
Correct.
Or next year would be 70,000 plus 2.75, which is automatically built into this. And that takes away, I guess the problem that I have is it takes away a little of the council's, depending on where the back half of the year goes and where other municipalities come in. For example, we gave the city of New Prague 275 their employees this year. The state of Minnesota only gave 2%. You know, and we often compare different cities and whatnot. So this guarantees you the 275 without really any input from the council coming in December when we're doing, or at budget time starting in September. I'm just wondering if we shouldn't wait to implement this once we get budget numbers and preliminary budgets and start doing this in September and waiting a couple of months to make sure that we have all the information that we need. Because as you know, our increase this year was, I think our budget increase was about $70,000 this year for what we spent. And now we're just gonna, right out of the gate, we're not even at budget time, and we're gonna have a $70,000 hit next year on just payroll increases, not including the 2.75%, which is already built in here.
The 275 is what you did authorize in December for adjustments in the compensation schedule for this year under 2021. Nothing has been built or created for 2022 at this time. So that would take different budgetary action that would have to be considered during the preparation of the 2022 budget.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe I read that wrong, because I thought it said that in here it was already established that
in what you're seeing in the current compensation plan that Leah had to work with, is it did include the 2.75 that was awarded for 2021. That's what her reference is about. And as I said, nothing has been predetermined for next year in 2022 as we sit here today.
Okay, I see that. You're right. I did read that wrong. This said including 2021 COLA scale adjustment of 2.75, that every employee should take this new scale step. And I in my head was thinking, oh, they've already built in the 2022 program. So that's my fault. I just read that wrong a little bit, but
so go ahead.
This is Mike, and when we talk about the cost, the recognition is that cost is spread over the general fund, sanitary, sewer, storm, the golf club, and obviously the electric and water utilities. So we tried to have one complete answer in anticipating your question, but it can be further broken down by fund based on the number of employees that we have calculated and that are impacted within each of those respective funds. So.
And I do have that breakdown.
Yeah, and I think it's worth noting too, because I would ask this question. There's always a cost to implement when you make a change to a table, because you have to just move people onto the table, basically, right? So you will have employees who get 25 cents to get on the table, and you might have an employee that gets almost $1 an hour raise. And it just depends on where their current rate is in proximity to where that next closest step is. So it's not an across the board, 2.75%. It's kind of the gross part of having to get on a new schedule, but it's a necessary evil, and you only do it once. So.
Because some people might not get a raise other than the COLA, correct? I mean, you might have somebody that's overpaid you found one that might be higher paid now, and
yeah, there are instances. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I thought I saw somebody was like, I can't remember which one, but one was like got paid more than what the scale before showed, and so they probably wouldn't be getting a raise, but maybe I'm wrong too. So, but
yeah, I don't know that New Prague, sometimes we will have that where an employee is being paid over the recommended scale, and so they basically just stay at the top step without an increase, or they stay at their current rate and wait for the scale to catch up with them after a couple years of COLA adjustments. You don't have any individuals within the city right now who are being paid above the proposed scale.
Okay, thank you.
That's a good question. Yeah.
So Sean, just for the general fund right now, just to let you know, you're looking at about approximately 17,000 of an increase. For the general
rest
fund
of the year?
only. Pardon? Yes.
Oh, for the general. Oh, okay.
Yes.
Thank you, Patty.
So we could have two different motions here. One adopting the schedule as presented with the bonus performance steps, knowing that we have to come up with a bonus performance system. That could be one motion, or we could do what Bruce wants and take a motion as far as just approving the standard steps. So,
Or I'd like to get the rest of the council's feedback on waiting until September when we start budgeting. Does anybody agree with me? Maybe not, but.
I guess, Sean, from my perspective.
I don't see how it helped to wait, Sean. Is there a timeline on this, Leah, that you need?
No, you can adopt at any time. I think from my understanding, I think an important piece is making sure, from what I'm hearing from the groups that I've met with, that we're addressing some of the journeyman utilities wage issues, and that seems to feel pressing based on what I hear. And I would say too, I don't know that it's. I mean, you have this initial cost to implement, Sean, but there's no sort of ongoing change, or as you roll into 2022, the way this program will roll into 2022 and the way you'll address budgeting and approving a cost of, evaluating and approving a cost of living, it actually is no different than your prior program. So even those length of service increases, okay, you're here one more year, so you get this step. It's the same step increase on your current plan. So you'll still have the ability to evaluate a cost of living for 2022 come budget time. And as your employees roll in and receive those longevity step increases, it's the same cost that you would incur on your current plan.
I would echo that, Sean, that I think we need a sense of urgency for the utility commission. The utility was really kind of driving this for those years already. And then secondly, if we're going to approve this anyway, I feel that we should advertise the new city administrator position at the new salary schedule than have such a significant change, since so we're advertising. That might affect the kind of recruiting we might get for that position.
And Bruce, as you make that comment, we could not very well do anything where the council hadn't completed their review and or any formal adoption of any change in a compensation plan. We couldn't do anything different than what we've already done under the current plan.
That's understood. I agree with you, Bruce. I would like to implement this new standard steps, but hold off on the bonus performance steps until we do get a good solid evaluation in place for our review, and then move forward to adopt the bonus performance steps.
Okay.
You could do that,
You
Dwayne,
wanna
and
make
I'd
that up?
recommend, based on what Bruce said earlier, is we could make the change within the items for consideration that, as he was suggesting, is maybe approve the schedule for the bonus performance steps with the rest of the language remaining that as it is, versus approve the implementation is approve the schedule for the performance steps, but really not implement it until the council and the staff are able to work more extensively and develop something in that area.
Does that work for you, Bruce? I mean, we got a motion and a second on the table. So if we just amend
No,
the
we
motion.
don't. No, we don't.
Don't we?
No, I didn't. Maggie, was that a motion? Or just
No,
a
I was just voicing
suggestion?
my opinion. So, you know, no
Yep.
motion has been made yet, but
No,
I'm,
there's no motion.
All right, my mistake.
So,
no, that's okay. I'm still not comfortable saying, let's approve the bonus performance steps. I would really like to see what we're going to get on paper and how we would implement them or grant those bonus performance steps. Because if we adopt it now, they're sitting out there, we have work to do, and we're saying we're going to move forward with it. So I want to pull back on that just so that I'm comfortable with how we would implement that.
Yeah, I would suggest either add the last two words "when approved" to it, or just eliminate the whole thing from the motion. Would be.
well, I guess we got to have a motion. We haven't gotten a motion yet. These are just suggestions.
Right.
So, but Maggie, if you want to make that a motion.
I will go ahead. I will make a motion to approve the standard steps without the bonus performance steps.
Okay, there's a motion been made by Maggie. Is there a second?
Second.
It's already been seconded, Rick.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, I didn't hear it. Who seconded it? I didn't catch it.
Oh, I thought you said it. I thought you said you seconded, Dwayne. My ears are.
No. I'm sorry. Rick made the second. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none. Bruce, how do you vote?
Aye.
John, how do you vote?
I'd like to push it back to September, but I'll vote aye.
Okay. Maggie, how do you vote?
Aye.
Rick, how do you vote?
Aye.
And Jurek votes aye. Motion carries unanimously. Okay, and then I think that we'll be engaging maybe Leah here for help on a performance type something or?
Yeah,
So,
we love, that's the fun stuff for me when you're an HR nerd.
Okay.
So yes, we would love to help, and then just so the council and commission's aware, then I will pull together all this information and tools and meet with Patty so that she's got what she needs to implement as well as maintain this program rolling forward. So the calculators to apply COLAs. And then one of the things that'll just be built into that tool are those bonus and performance steps. So you don't have to use them, but they'll be there so that if ever down the road you decide to implement, you haven't lost them. You don't need to recreate them at that time. So
great.
I'll schedule that. But thank you all so very much. This has been a big project, so it feels like a real accomplishment to get it over the finish line. So I appreciate everyone's great questions and involvement.
Thank
Thank you.
Leah.
Thank you, Leah.
And take care of those allergies.
Yeah, no kidding. I know. Thanks for putting up with it. Have a good evening.
You
Yes,
too.
you too.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is resolution approving a variance in regards to 4th Avenue and 12th Street. Ken?
Yep, so I just got a quick PowerPoint I will run through for everybody here. Let me get this going. All right, so item on the table is variance V2 2021, which is a reduced access spacing from 500 feet to 80 feet. And the applicant is Ivy Brook Parking LLC. And if you remember earlier in 2021, we had approved a conditional use permit for this site. It includes radon business property for conditional use permit for exterior storage, particularly on the north end of the site. We had a stipulation that that could not be utilized until access was figured out into the site. MnDOT had already given the opinion that they would not get access direct from Trunk Highway 21. And we had known at the time that an access that did exist on the site did not meet our minimum 500-foot spacing requirement from Highway 21 as an arterial road. So that is what they're looking to have approved, is to utilize an existing curb cut that was put there back in the 90s when 12th Street Northwest was built, and have that utilized, and it's roughly 80 feet from the right of way along Highway 21. So this is that curb cut that exists on the ground. They're not planning to put a new one in. They just would utilize the existing curb cut and then go into the area here, which is what we've called the north end parking area. They would still have to finish their landscaping and fencing requirements that were part of the conditional use permit process, but this variance was just so they could utilize that access off 12th to get into and out of the site. One of the issues in the review of this is they looked at crossing the creek, and due to really the physical nature of that creek running through the property, really made it economically infeasible to route a driveway over that area that could handle actual vehicle traffic. There currently is like a snowmobile trail and bridge there, but anything more than that would be a significant change in that ability to do that. So as I said, the Planning Commission did review this variance request back in March. They tabled the item and talked about it again at their April 28th meeting. And what we took for the time between the March and April meeting was to look at some conditions that could be added for approval. Now, conditions are able to be added to variances with the relatively recent law change to the variance statute. And as long as those conditions are relating to a mitigation of a potential concern with the variance, they can be added. So that is what we did and had reviewed and approved by the Planning Commission on the meeting on April 28th, where they did approve, recommend for approval on a 5-0 vote, the variance request to utilize that existing curb cut. And really those conditions were added to address traffic concerns related to that site, and specifically for peak times for the high school and other events going on in the area. There were really the major concerns. So those conditions specifically are use of the curb cut is only allowed for this proposed use for the conditional use permit that was approved earlier in 2021. If the site ever changes, this would not carry over to any future use. So that was the first condition. Traffic impact to the site must not cause more than 10 vehicles per day on average, or cause excessive traffic function delays on either Trunk Highway 21 or 12th Street. And again, this is things that can be determined by traffic studies that we can easily do with our radar counter, and then also with accident data from the police department. But that would be looked at if need be in the future. And then really the main limiting factor is the applicant is required to put in his rental policies that they cannot enter the site for that half-hour time period in the morning, and then 20 minutes in the afternoon, which is really the let in and let out time for the high school when school's in session at the high school. So those are kind of the identified areas for peak traffic on 12th Street. So those are the conditions that were recommended. So ultimately, the staff and the planning commission did recommend approval of the variance, and it, as written in the resolution, with those conditions being also included in that resolution. So again, just a couple of photos to show you. They're really for mowing the field. Historically, that curb cut's been used for that, but this would obviously be used for storage use. Just a couple other photos there. You can see the driveway here, hopefully, in the photo. So it is a ways away. There's really no concern from the city engineer in backing up traffic to either the railroad or the highway. And MnDOT had no concerns either. Couple of final.
Ken, is that drainage ditch that goes across? And so when he does the driveway, a drainage ditch is going to go in there?
Say that again,
You
Rick?
mean a culvert?
Yeah, well, yeah. You see that little line right there when it goes from city to private property. There's a little gutter in there, and I'm just wondering, you got to have storm sewers underneath it, or?
Yeah, so the applicant's engineer is obviously putting together a full plan for drainage and grading on the site. So we don't have that final plan yet, Rick, but that'll be reviewed and approved by Chris Cabot. So yeah, all that'll be taken care of before anything goes on the site.
And that'll be in addition to what's on here.
Yeah, anything that, yeah, there would be changes to the site, obviously. Yep.
Thank you.
So that does conclude the report I have. So I can stand for questions, and I believe Trevor is on the call as the applicant if you have any questions for him as well.
Okay, are there any questions? Otherwise, I'll make a motion to accept or to approve the variance number V2-21 in the approved resolution number 21-05-03-01. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, there's a motion and second. Any other discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? Bruce? Bruce,
You're
how do you-
muted, Bruce.
your mic's on. You're there.
Aye, yeah, takes me a while.
Okay. Okay,
Aye.
Bruce votes aye. John?
Aye.
Maggie?
Aye.
Rick?
Aye.
And Jurek votes aye. Motion carries unanimously. Great. Good luck. All right, moving on to item number 5, resolution amending conditional use permit at Giesenbro. Bro.
All right, so we have the applicant from Giesenbroich. I'm going to say it.
Giesenbroich, thank you for correcting me.
And I do believe I see Aaron on the call here, but I'm going to run through the summary report here tonight for you. So this is an amendment to a conditional use permit C3 2016, and specific for a patio extension at the brewery. Give you a little background. So like I said, back in 2016, the brewery and tap room with the outdoor patio was approved under that conditional use permit initially. This request is just being made to amend the patio area of the brewery for obviously consumption of beverages out there. And this would be enclosed by the same 4-foot tall lattice type fence that they've got out there today. It's a wooden fence. It would continue to have emergency only exits. And they are also proposing to add 2 additional trees out on that patio area as it extends west of the existing patio. And then due to the location of the patio extension, basically going directly over their sidewalk connection from the site and the front door out to the highway sidewalk system there, they are proposing to put in a new sidewalk connection on the west side of the patio to continue and meet that ordinance requirement. So those are part of the plan. Overall, they would have, or they're guessing they would have 12 tables out there, kind of a high top type table with 4 seats only, would not be the picnic table type tables that they have currently out there. And then they also plan on changing the surfacing of the patio from kind of the pea gravel to a crushed granite. That should provide a little bit better footing for everybody out on the patio area. So as I noted, the Planning Commission did review at their meeting last week on April 28th, and they did recommend the approval and your consideration tonight, and their recommendation was a 5-0 vote. And we'll run through site plan and everything here for you, just to have a little better visual of how everything turned out here. So property in red is the overall property that they own for the brewery. Zooming on into the site plan here a little better. So you can see the existing beer garden area, about 950 square feet. They're planning to expand this directly to the west. It's about 780 square feet of seating area, and that's not including the emergency exiting route through there if anybody needed to get out through the patio and out further away from the building. But you can see the 2 trees they'd be required to provide. Here's their existing sidewalk connection that will be moving over to the west side of the site, closer to the sign. The ACE sign is being moved to this location, and the one that's currently where the ACE sign is located is being removed altogether. So that will kind of clean up the area, obviously, immediately around the patio. And I think that's the majority of things I need to know. Oh, and then just to point out, the emergency exit onlys will be, one will be where that old sidewalk was, and then there's an emergency exit kind of at the northwest corner of the patio, will be moved over to the new area, and you can exit directly out onto the sidewalk in front of the patio. So they are getting close to maximizing parking on the site. Currently, there's 57 parking spaces on the site. With the expanded patio, they would be utilizing 54 of the 57 spaces. And then also recognizing that they typically have, at least on weekend and evening times, or even during the day, I should say, on the weekends, food truck parking directly in front of the brewery. So they still maintain their minimum parking, even with the food truck attending the property. Just some photos real quick. So they'll just continue this same wood lattice type design onto the expanded patio area. Like I said, the ACE sign will be basically removed from here, and that ACE sign will be replacing the Gen Air Magic Chef sign that you see on that west side of the site. And the patio west end will be kind of the end of this bump out, would be the best, I guess, physical marker out there today, and then extend back no further to the highway than existing. So just directly west for that patio expansion.
Hey, Ken, is that sidewalk, the one that they're eliminating, is that ours or is that theirs?
That's theirs, Rick. And like
So
I said,
they're going to be paying for the new sidewalk and everything like that?
Say that again, Rick?
They're going to pay for that new sidewalk?
Yeah, they'll be installing at their cost a new connection further to the west of the new patio area.
All right, thank you, bud.
Yep. So ultimately, staff and the planning commission did recommend approval of the amendment to the conditions permit for that expansion of the outdoor seating area with the findings and conditions listed in the resolution. And with that, I'll stand for questions. And again, Aaron with Giesenbroy is also in attendance if you have any questions for him tonight as well.
All right, any questions?
Mayor, I have one. Ken,
Yes.
this just amends the CUP that to consider moving or expanding the license for Giesenbrow, that'll have to come back before the council for review and approval.
Yep, and that's pretty straightforward. Once, I'm assuming, Aaron, once you get closer to the time that you are wanting that to get open, we can address that with the council at that time. So depending on your timing, we can get that taken care of pretty quickly, I would assume.
Any other
I'll move
questions
to
or
approve,
comments?
Mr. Mayor.
Okay, so Rick has made the motion to approve the resolution as presented. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Rick made the motion, Sean seconded it. Is there any other discussion?
Ken, Jim
Yeah.
here, was there discussion about a 6-foot fence along the parking lot on the backside?
We did talk about a 6-foot fence at the planning commission and also with Aaron about that. And that would have, in my opinion, and actually the planning commission's opinion, including Aaron as well, that 6-foot tall fence on the backside by the parking lot would have blocked view from the bartender area, looking out through those windows along the west elevation. And that was one of the key things about the initial conditions permit, was keeping that open and visible to the staff, because obviously they don't have wait staff out there. So visibility was kind of a key point to that. And the question was raised with Aaron at the meeting, I believe, at planning commission, if that has been a concern in the current patio. And with the visibility, it was noted that no, and that he would be concerned if the fence were taller in that area, because you would never know people walking along the sidewalk, highway side of the path, what would be going on the opposite side of that fence. So that was the discussion that occurred at that point.
Okay.
This is Mike. Jim, I assume you're asking that question as you take a look at being able to pass a alcoholic beverage to somebody outside of the beer garden area.
But, well, yeah, that's my concern, but I'm glad that the bartender can at least see the exchange happen.
From our perspective so far, that's never really been an issue. We've never seen that happen with the existing beer garden since we've been open.
I can agree with that, Aaron. Just when there's larger crowds around and there are people parking in the lot, that's where it would be my concern then. That there'd be people hanging out in the parking lot on that edge, and they would just have access that things could be passed over.
Gotcha.
And also it would create a backdrop for that area that is exposed to the parking lot also, that from the highway side, you wouldn't have that see across the whole patio. It would have a backdrop on that backside on the north end of it.
Yeah.
That was my only discussion with Ken previously.
Yep, and we did talk about that at planning commission, Jim.
Okay.
All right, any other discussion or questions for Ken or Aaron or anybody else? Otherwise, we'll vote. Bruce, how do you vote?
Aye.
Sean, how do you vote?
Aye.
Maggie,
Aye.
Rick,
Aye.
and Jurek votes aye. Motion carries unanimously. Good luck, Aaron.
Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, next on the agenda is Police Department Strategic Transition Plan. Chief, you're up.
I would believe that all of you had an opportunity to read through the memo, so I don't have to read it to you. But a summary would be that in the next 12 to 15 months, I am looking at leaving the department for retirement. And I guess as my time as chief here, I have been preparing for that transition since I started with personnel on the department, and looking forward to that changing of the leadership, I guess, and preparing for that. With that, we are currently 10 sworn officers. That's our authorized strength. We have our 10 officers, a chief, a sergeant, 8 patrol officers, and 2 support staff in our department. If we believe that filling this position would be a promotion from within the department, ultimately that will create a backfilling of an officer for the personnel that gets changed around within the department then. So part of my process was thinking of this entire transition and where I would want to place personnel that are able to serve the needs of the department and the citizens of New Prague. And with that, I came up with this transition plan with 3 different phases. The first of which is to appoint a detective. Currently, Sergeant Applin serves as our department detective also. He works during the day shift and is able to take on some of those investigations that come in, whether it's a child protection report, crim sex, or an adult protection report, or any investigation that probably takes a little more than just basic follow-up that a patrol officer could do. It might be a investigation that is more involved that may take several days to follow up on. So he is able to do that. The idea of changing that position from a sergeant detective position would be to utilize an actual sergeant position as a nighttime supervisor also. So by replacing Tim, or that sergeant position, with an officer detective appointment, that would allow that detective to work day shifts. And in this transition time, it would also allow Tim to take part in that transition and be able to do some good training for him or her, that officer, as they work through and develop a good foundation for that officer to be in that position. The other transition would be to appoint or promote a sergeant on the department. It would be my vision to see this sergeant as more of a nighttime or an evening road sergeant that would be available for supervision during the evening hours. That individual would supervise patrol and be available for more of those evening shifts or night shifts then. During the day, I'm around. Right now, Tim also is working. So at night, if officers have a supervisory concern or need, they're either calling Tim or I. For that, it would be nice to have an officer, a sergeant that is working a night shift, be available for that, and also have just first line supervising of those officers that are working then. For the sergeant position, I was looking at both the detective and sergeant as we run through the process to put those people in place. It would be nice to be able to run those processes together, parallel with those interviews and an appointment or promotion, to be able to get the detective in place as soon as possible, because just the training would be nice to be able to do that through the summer months when we have another officer, our SRO or school resource officer, come out of the school and go into the schedule. So he'd be able to fill that position. So we wouldn't be short on the road while we're doing that. Additionally, by doing that process together with the detective and the sergeant, we would be able to at least designate who that promotion or who's going to be involved in that promotion, so that we could continue some training for that individual throughout the summer months. And I would look to make that promotion official at or around September 1st for that promotion. And then the final phase of the transition would be to, provided all of those come from within, those promotions come from within our department, and ultimately my replacement is comes from within our department, which has been the history of replacing the chief by promoting somebody from within for over the last 60 years. Provided we believe that is going to be the process, once that person gets promoted when I leave, then we would be short an officer overall on the department. It would be my intention to try and get that officer hired as soon as possible after the first of the year, so that 2 months of that hiring process is done already, and we would have 4 months to train that officer, do field training with that officer as they move through the field training process. And then that officer would be available to work the road at or about the time I would be ready to leave the department then. In the memo, I put some possible costs for the detective position at about $3,325, and that would be for the 7 months of a detective, and then $2,173 for a sergeant position for the last 4 months of the year. I think we could look at absorbing that by our 21 budget right now. That wouldn't be too difficult to do. With the hiring of an officer for the additional 4 months of field training to have that person in place, that would be right around $26,000, just over $26,000. With that, there's also an anticipated offset with the replacement in my position of an individual taking that with a lower wage than my wage. So there could be some offset on that. That has yet to be determined as we move through that process. But it is the recommendation of the staff to move forward with this plan: an appointment of a detective, an appointment of a road sergeant, and backfilling a position so an individual is able to take the road position prior to my leaving the department. This would provide a seamless transition for the department moving forward. Anybody have any questions at all?
I do, I guess. There must be something in the water there at the city hall, huh? That everyone's leaving jumping ship here. But
no, nothing in the water other than we've been talking about it for years, how everybody is kind of about the same timeline.
Pretty soon, Matt's going to be the only one there, I guess, but
Don't forget Ken.
yeah. Well, I appreciate that you went through all this thought and put together this plan. What are the things that might go wrong with this plan, or what's the risk to the plan, and how do you unwind it if something goes wrong?
I don't know exactly what would go wrong with it. I mean, the idea would be we'd put the best person in place for that detective position and allow that person to get some good training and train under Tim. And I think part of freeing up some of Tim's assigned duties right now is also an effort to plan for that future also, that Tim is around during day shift with me. I would have him be doing more administrative things, learning what to do and how to do those. Again, looking at that promotional piece that we're looking, that if we do promote from within, we have some candidates that are available within the department and would do a nice job as the appointed chief. As for the sergeant position, I just think these two positions are important to put in place, because again, at the end, when I leave the department with that officer hired and backfilled, everything would be in place and we would be back to 10 sworn officers with a chief, a sergeant, a detective officer, and 7 patrol officers then. So we'd be back to our same strength, just realigned a little bit. And again, I think the idea of the night sergeant is important to get some of that supervision out in the evening and night hours, that a supervisor is on the road with officers that are working also. The only piece that timing wise piece to be concerned about would be when we put on this officer for those 4 months of training through that field training process. As time progresses and my plan comes together and I am able to pick more of a solid date, I would look at that as kind of the benchmark, and then working back those 4 months to make sure we get that person on board as soon as possible to get that 4 months of training in before I would leave them. So whether that is immediately after the first of the year, or if I decide to be around further into the summer without picking a hard date, that timeline could be adjusted, Bruce, for that.
So Jim, you do have interest from Tim and interest from somebody else within the department for that road sergeant position?
Yeah, obviously, yeah, we have not, I talked about it at our last staff meeting, just that this is a plan that I would be proposing. And based on the council's response, we will see what would happen with that. But yeah, I believe we would have interest from the department on the detective position, and those interested in being promoted to a sergeant position. We have individuals on our department that would serve well in both of those positions.
Thank you.
So Jim, we'd have 2 sergeants then? We'd be going from 1 to 2, a nighttime one and then a daytime one? Or
we would, for the transition period, Sean, until I would ultimately leave the department, then we would be back to the 1 sergeant.
And this isn't anything against Tim. I think the world of Tim. We've known him a lot of years. But again, it seems like we're anointing somebody without a council interview. I know when you when Mark Vosepka left, the council had an opportunity to interview you, and you were the odds-on favorite. Everybody liked you, and you became the chief, but we had the opportunity to interview you and kind of get your take on what a chief's job is and where you saw the department going. And I thought it was really a valuable insight. And now we're almost to the point, and Matt, nothing against you, you know, I was against the process there. And with Josh, it's just like we're anointing people without doing some due diligence. And I just feel like there should be a process in place. And personally, I think the council, given that it's the chief of police, should have we should be interviewing him before we make these changes that put him on a path that he's already locked in on. And, you know, it's always been my contention is that I guess I would always like to see, he might think we don't need 10 officers and we don't have to backfill somebody. We can cover it adequately. And it's been my contention that the city of New Prague really doesn't get as much attention from either Scott County or LeSueur County Sheriff's Department when the taxpayers are paying, and especially in LeSueur County, because the majority of the taxes are coming from New Prague being the biggest city. We don't see a whole lot of them there, and it's always my contention that maybe the city could have some cost savings with not carrying so many officers, and then in a situation where there is help, instead of having 3 officers on, maybe it's 2 officers, utilizing the counties and working with the Sheriff's Department to keep the Scott County guy fairly close to New Prague so he can adequately respond in a emergency. And same with LeSueur. They, you know, if an officer needed assistance, which happens very rarely, I'm guessing, in New Prague, and thankfully for that. But there could be some cost savings involved there, and maybe we don't have to backfill. I like asking those questions and kicking around and make sure that city staff's thinking about all those things. And Tim might have a different, if he is chosen chief of police, and if I had to bet my house on it, I'd probably bet my house on it. But I just think that the council should have an opportunity to talk to him and stuff before the plan's really kind of implemented, and maybe we're getting the cart in front of the horse a little bit again. So that's my take on it. I'd like to hear what maybe the other council people think.
Well, I totally agree with you on some of that stuff, Sean, but I'm wondering if it went the other way. What would be your threshold if you needed more PD instead of less?
Well, I mean, I guess I'd look at the science. I want to hear what their philosophy is. I mean, if towns of 8,200 people, if we're on the low end in most towns of 8,200 people that are in a semi-rural exurb area are carrying 12 or 14, then I'd like to see that science. But there could be 8,200 population towns in Carver, for example, that maybe only have 6 officers and not 10. I don't know those figures. I guess I'd like to get some of the science and the philosophy behind it, and I always look at it as a cost-saving measure and being frugal with our taxpayers' money. And if there's opportunities to be a little frugal on it, maybe we don't have to backfill one, and that saves. As you know, our police budget is well over a third of our annual budget. It's our biggest chunk, and I know there's a lot of things that go with it, 24-hour service and everything else, but I just like to ask a question and maybe look at the science, the philosophy, where other communities are at, and do our due diligence, really. So
one more thing, Sean. I'm concerned because there's the whole atmosphere about the PD. We need the PD. I mean, they're a necessity, and I don't see. If they need more police, I would say yes to that, even though it does affect the budget. I understand sticking to the budget, but sometimes you got to spend a little bit more money. And Sean, I just want you to understand about the contracts. You know, I'm not sure if you had them before, but if you get a contract with the counties, if we get a county contract from Scott and a county contract from LeSueur, you're going to be spending a lot more money.
Rick, I'm not talking about a contract with them. I'm just asking for the fact that we should be able to utilize county resources that our taxpayers are paying for And they can certainly come into town. I've seen sheriff's departments circling Le Sueur or the city of Le Center nonstop. Obviously, there are police facilities there, but I rarely see them in New Prague. And I'm just saying, if instead of the city of New Prague taxpayers taking on the burden and not getting anything in return from the county side of it, I think that's a legitimate answer. And nobody's saying I'm not anti-police or anything else. I don't say if they can determine that we need extra officers, I'm all for it. I have many, many friends who are cops. I've done ride with cops since I was 19 years old. So it's, you know, it has nothing to do with that. It has to be, it's just about budgetary responsibility and looking for options to potentially save money that maybe we don't need that many people. And I would like to, as a taxpayer of Le Sueur County, I'd like to, knowing that I fund that sheriff's department with my county taxes, I'd like to get them here in town every now and then and utilize them. And I think the Scott County residents would do that too. So, but you know what? New Prague hasn't handled, and it's been great, and they don't really see a need for it for the most part, because I rarely see them unless it's the ones that are coming into town that live here and are driving their cars home from work, like Dwayne. So
Mr.
I see
Mayor,
his
what
car.
is your opinion on that, Mr. Mayor?
What's that? I'm sorry. Something got.
What's your opinion on this conversation?
Well, right now, you know, I hear where Sean's coming from. And you're dealing with politicians because they're both elected officials. And when I pulled the pin the end of July, Scott County is going to be down 9 deputies that they have to backfill. And they just started the process. It's going to take them years to catch up. Because it just takes time with the training and everything else. You know, the days are gone when I got thrown the car keys and given a city map and you're out, like when I started in Le Sueur and I asked them, well, how many days am I going to do field training? And they said, well, we'll figure it out. And after 2 days, I was on my own. You know, those days are gone because of liability and all kinds of other things that come on. I mean, we got to think outside the box. I would like to see some stats, Jim, on that, you know, that Sean brought up, you know, like, you know, that I know that's how years ago, like in Shakopee and stuff, they'd go by those stats to always get.
Yep, I can do some research. I was gonna say I can research some of that and see what the per capita is right now and where that aligns with cities our size. I can put something together for that.
But wouldn't you also want to take a look at the number of calls? I've had an opportunity just casually to talk to some of our police officers, and it seems as if there's been an uptick in activity. So I think we would want to look at that as well. And if you've got officers that are spread thinly and not being able to get to calls or address issues, that would be a concern.
Yeah, you know, and even calls that are pending too, Jim, you know, when you got 3 or 4 stacked, that's not a good deal. You know, if that's happening, then we should know about it.
Yep, I can take a look at those and I'll pull stats out. I know in 16, when I put together a proposal for hiring that additional officer to get to 10, all of that was part of it, that it was based on per capita, what our population was at the time, and all our call volume. We even broke it down into some of the more major crimes, and some of those calls take more time to investigate. And that's why we needed personnel to be covering road shift while somebody was investigating that. But no, I can put some things together for you.
Jim, can you tell us real quick what, for example, let's say both officers or we have what, 2 or 3 officers, 3 officers on a Friday and Saturday, right? Is that?
That's what the schedule shows. Yeah, as long as, they're all working and in place.
Okay, so let's say 2 of them are tied up on a domestic or something, and one has got a suspected drunk driver or a car accident or something, and they're filling out the report, and another call comes in. How would that be handled if it was in Scott County or in Le Sueur County? Would we call the sheriff's department to assist us?
Yep. They do.
Yep.
They come down and assist.
Okay. And then
When
how often does that happen? I mean, is it frequent or very, I think it's very infrequent. I rarely see them. I see,
Probably at night it's more frequent
Yep.
on the weekends. It definitely is.
And even if we have 2 officers at a domestic, they may show up to assist just to make sure everything is okay. If they have a domestic just outside of town, 1 or 2 of our officers, depending on where they're coming from, may respond to that call also. So we have a lot of back and forth with that, Sean.
okay.
Before we had Jeff Belzer in the city,
Mhm.
we would go out to there for alarm calls for Lesueur County all the time. And oftentimes if we got out there and they were coming from the south side of the county, they would just ask us to handle it and wouldn't come to the location. So depending, and you bring up Lesueur County a lot too, depending on how they divide their county and where their deputies are, they're not always able to come up and take calls with us. They're able to sometimes, but if they're tied up, then they're not able to do that.
Well, I don't know how the zone coverage works and whatnot, but I would guess that Sheriff Mason would probably be willing if we said, hey, we want to rely on your officers a little bit here too every now and then. But I don't know if they can keep them within a mile or 2 of town or, circulate on the northern half of Lesueur County that they're close enough to respond within 3 or 4 minutes, or I don't know how you guys work together hand in hand on that, but that would seem like a cost saving measure for us, and that maybe the taxpayers of Lesueur County could get some benefit of their county tax dollars, which are supporting the sheriff's department.
Yeah, I think as far as I'm aware, just Casota had a contract with them where they spent so many hours a week in there, and I don't know if they're still maintaining that or not. But
Yeah.
but beyond that, yeah, it depends on how many they have available and are on patrol, and if they're tied up at a call, then that 3-minute response time probably is not going to happen then.
Hey, Jim, you recently had an injured officer. Was there good coverage then? How bad did that hurt? We had him out for what, a couple of weeks?
Yeah, a few weeks he was out for surgery. There were 2 officers up at the call at the hospital, and that's there was a physical altercation there. They were called up there to help restrain the individual, and then he started fighting. So yeah, he got injured on that, but there were 2 officers there. There was an additional officer available heading there also. They were able to take control of him and maintain control of him until he was given some medication and wasn't resistant.
90-90?
Yep. Was not resisting anymore.
Good. Well, I'm glad that officer's back. I was just wondering how you covered his being gone. I mean, he was the school officer, correct?
Yep. Yeah.
So then the call load went up for the on-duty officer to help
to respond to the
schools.
school. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. When there was issues, the on-duty officer would respond. Tim would get called out every once in a while also to school concerns.
Well, I'm glad that he turned out okay. You can thank all your guys for me. I think they do a great job.
Okay, thanks.
So this is your strategic plan, obviously.
Mhm.
It's a plan, transition plan.
Yep.
We don't have to take any action on it tonight. I take you aren't looking for that. Or
Well,
were you?
other than providing with agreeing to the plan to be able to move forward to authorize the selection of a detective and ultimately an appointment of a sergeant, and then a backfilling of a position. So just, I guess, in regards to that would be to approve the plan so that I could continue to move forward with it.
Approve or accept?
Pardon?
You want one that just said accept? We can make a motion to accept your,
No, I'd just like to table it till the next meeting and you get the stats and then,
Okay.
if that's okay with everybody else, I think that's what we're looking for. If that's what I can kind of tell. And then we go from there.
Okay.
That sounds
Does that
good.
sound, what's that? Does that sound good?
Yeah, that
that's
sounds good to me.
That's definitely reasonable.
all right, good with me.
Is that okay? I know, Jim, yeah, go ahead, Mike.
I would offer for Sean's comments or questions that albeit in regards to the consideration of what might happen with the appointment and interview of the chief of police position, where we handled the one in public works. It probably, albeit it's on the same line or the same level as a department head level position, you are correct that the council did have an opportunity to interview the candidates. That obviously in my position that we would take applicants for consideration, and likely my position would have a recommendation to the council, but before the council would act on that, you could, as you did the last time when Jim was promoted, is that the council could conduct an interview before a final selection is made. So you don't have to give up that process as you listen to what Jim is proposing, that if there are internal candidates, obviously my position probably would have a first review of that, and albeit we would normally have a recommendation, that before the council acts on that recommendation, if let's say there were two and then narrowed it down to one, or even in the case of both of them, the council could choose, because of the nature of this position and its community interaction, you could ask or request that you have the opportunity to interview those candidates before a final decision is made, as you did back in 2014 when we promoted Jim from the sergeant to the chief's position. So you don't have to feel like you've given up that opportunity, because in the capacity with any department head, that recommendation and final approval does rest with the council. And if the council wants an interview and a review in that, you certainly would have a right to request that.
It would seem to me, though, if we're going to be doing that, that would have to be done sooner than later, because as I mentioned the first time around, how do you unwind it if you're doing a process and you determine that you're going a different direction?
Well, that different direction that you're talking about is that either we're going to ultimately promote from within to the chief's position from internally, and likely you're not going to promote anybody that doesn't have any kind of existing supervisory experience. Or in that process, when you take a look at that, you either believe or don't believe that you have a qualified candidate that's able to do that, and then you would then turn and choose to go out and advertise that position externally. But I think, as Jim has indicated, is that the city has had a fairly good reputation, and it's existed where there have been sufficient individuals from within the ranks that have been generally considered. And I can't say that I've been here, and I'll take Jim at his word. And if we had to prove it up, we probably certainly could, that in the historical case of where those promotions have come from for the last 60 years, they have come from internally, versus trying to go out and bring in somebody from the outside to now take control of the oversight of the police department. If we didn't have any qualified candidates, then yes, that would be the logical ideal route to go, is to advertise it externally and handle it that way. But it doesn't appear historically that we've needed to do that.
Well, it just seems to me that I kind of get what Sean is saying, that we're not just anointing it. It almost seems to me, I'm just thinking out loud, that you do the process first of all, and you determine who your heir apparent is, even though they don't take the position, and then you get that off the table, so we don't have the risk of that not happening. And then you have people that are promoted that you can't unpromote and things like that, even though the risk of that is so low because you've done it this way for 60 years. I've never been a part of this process, but it just seems a little clunky that way, that this is all contingent upon this occurring, but we don't know for sure that's going to occur until we do it later. That's the only thing.
Well, the alternative of waiting to try to do that even at a later date basically puts all of these after the fact, after you go through that selection or hiring process for that position. If that's the case, then you've got, when you look at the time frame involved in attempting to fill the detective, the sergeant, and or another hiring position, if you try to do all of that afterwards, then you will have quite a disruption in the timing of being able to fill those positions and not have downtime for whoever becomes the chief of now having to work after the fact to try to get these positions and everything taken care of after the fact. And so from Jim's standpoint, trying to get this ready and put into place and positioned so that when somebody does get selected, they don't have that disruption in service and the shortage of manpower to undertake that after that selection takes place.
You know, I understand. Like I said, I appreciate the plan. I'm just wondering, just like the corporate CEO gets the heir apparents appointed, decided a year before it happens, and they know when the person's gone. A year from now, they've figured out who takes that position. But we're kind of talking around this issue. I'm assuming you feel you have a candidate that's qualified, but we're not going through that process yet of anointing them or approving them or whatever. But
we haven't, and that doesn't mean that it couldn't. I don't think that's been the usual and customary way to have done that, but there's nothing that says we couldn't take a look at that and do that up front so that the rest of it seemingly would fall in place. But it's just kind of awkward and traditionally and typically probably hasn't happened in the governmental sector like they've done with some of the corporate business things that you're referring to, Bruce. So it's not to say that it couldn't happen. It just hasn't been the norm and would be a deviation from what kind of has been done in the past.
I think there's some creative ways maybe to do it. And Sean probably doesn't want to hear this, but I think our stats and numbers will show that we probably are understaffed. When we get the stats and his research at the next meeting, it might answer some of our questions. We might find out that,
Exactly what I was thinking.
we might find out that, well, we need to put on 2 officers or something like that. My big concern is officer safety. Obviously, I've lived it for 30 some plus years. I do not like to be, and I've done it, standing with a guy on Main Street or in some house, trying to talk the guy down so he doesn't punch me or punch the people I'm trying to protect while my backup is coming for 20 minutes away, that's where I come from, is more officer safety than calls and crimes and stuff like that. That's what it boils down to. And I'll tell you, that 20 minutes or 25 minutes seems like a lifetime when you're fighting with somebody, or even just trying to keep the conversation calm so you don't aggravate them anymore. So That's my 2 cents. So,
And Dwayne, you know, you do make a good point there, and you certainly have a lot of, you know, of experience. And I think, Bruce, what you were saying is that in the event that there is a person promoted from within, let's say for the chief's position, that the council just wants to ensure that through an interview that that person is a good fit, as we have done with previous chiefs. And so there is some risk in transitioning someone to that position and providing on-the-job training, and then maybe realizing it's not the best candidate. And I'm not saying that that would happen in our case based on historical information, but there is that potential risk, I think, albeit low, to Bruce's point. So just for clarification.
And Dwayne, I want to make sure everybody understands that officer safety is important to me too. Just like I said, I have many, many friends who are police officers, and I hear the stories.
And I didn't direct that towards you.
Yeah.
I was thinking more the money.
I always want to explore, you know, is one's too many and a million's not enough, you know? I mean, it's, I just want to get the right number.
That's correct. And that's what I was getting at too. Yep.
So I agree with you, Mayor, that we should go ahead and just table the decision until our next meeting. And then we can kind of look at the whole picture with statistics as well.
Is that going to be enough time for you to get that stuff together, Jim?
Yeah, I'll work on that next couple weeks.
Okay.
I can do that. Again, I mean, just since 2016, we've added to 10 officers. I don't see that any of what I'm going to bring to you is going to indicate that we should have less than that.
Correct.
Our times have only changed that. And Sean, I have always been fiscally responsible with the money.
Yeah, didn't mean to imply that you weren't. I just
no, but that's always a thought of mine also, that we have this amount of money to get this job done. And in government, you often do more with less money than normal, at least in the private sector anyways. But no, we've been fiscally responsible, but I don't think that anything is going to show that, hey, we can get by with 9 officers. That's not going to happen.
Sure, and that might not. My biggest point, the point that I was trying to make, is that I would really like to get some benefit of Scott County and LeSueur County officers here in town that could potentially give the taxpayers in New Prague, who are paying twice, but not really seeing the services from the county, where maybe we're bankrolling other communities and smaller communities in the county where they're seeing the sheriffs and we're not. And on the LeSueur County side, we are the biggest city in LeSueur County, and we should get a chunk of that attention. And if that's the case, and if we get that attention, then maybe there's room that we didn't have to backfill that could save the taxpayers of New Prague a little bit of money. So, but I never want to just, you know, I don't want to just jeopardize officer safety. That's important to me as well. And I know how tough the job is through my friends, and God bless every one of you. But I just want to make sure that we're looking at all the possibilities.
That's fair.
All right. Well, I will work on pulling those stats together for May 17th meeting then.
Okay.
Thank you, Jim.
Sounds good.
Yep.
Thank you. Okay, we're on to item number 7, consent agenda. So with that, I would take a motion to approve the items listed.
Wait, I had a question on it though.
Oh yeah, okay, which one?
I just wanted to ask, on the accounts payable,
Okay.
I saw that the building inspectors went on retreat or something, but the hotels were $269 a night. What were they staying at the Ritz-Carlton or what? It was like, holy smokes. My company would kill me if I spent $269 a night.
No, it's not per night, and it was prepaying for a conference they have coming up this summer. So
it just wasn't the hotel? That was the whole thing, or?
it's for multiple nights. It's not.
Oh, it is, okay.
Yeah, I'll give you more details on that,
I
but
was gonna say $269 a night, man, that's a nice hotel.
They better steal the toilet paper.
Yeah.
last year either. So there's some extra training days in there. So
Okay.
but we budgeted for it.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions? Otherwise, I'd take a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Rick made the motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
There's a motion made by Rick. Jerick seconded it. Bruce, how do you vote?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Maggie?
Aye.
Rick?
Aye.
And Jerick votes aye. Thank you. Motion carries. All right. Is there anybody with miscellaneous?
I just wanted to,
I have one. Oh.
Okay, go ahead, Bruce. I heard you first.
just to circle back and who is going to contact Liza to let her know that there's a different compensation range that for the advertisements? Is that Mike? Are you going to do that, or who's going to do that?
Yes, I will.
Okay, thank you. That's all
Sean?
I had.
Yeah, I had a couple for some residents that wanted to know. First of all, Mike, I'd want to ask you, where are we at on that Pioneer Saloon situation, that 18 inches over? I know I talked with you one other time. Mark, the owner of the Pioneer Saloon, was kind of curious if we could get movement on that or do something as far as just for the rest of the council's benefit. The Pioneer Saloon is actually on about 18 inches. His outside wall is in the vacant space there that was given to us for our little park and seating area that we're going to make it into after the street construction's done.
I didn't know that.
We had a similar situation years ago with the old wine bar and Chuck Tupie's building, and we had to kind of facilitate there. It's about 18 inches, I think, that went over it, but it would be easier if we could clean up that title. I don't think the 18 inches means anything to us as far as, we could come up with a dollar value that Mark's agreeable to. He also said that he would pay for all the any platting or title work that needs to be done. So it really wouldn't cost the taxpayer anything. We'd be selling him the 18 inches that his wall's over on it just to clean it up. So in case he ever wanted to sell the bar or that building, it'd be much easier than having a written agreement with the city that he can use that wall. I didn't see a big issue with it, but Mike, I don't know, was that a good representation of what he had asked of me to ask you?
Well, if you recall, when you brought that to my attention, I provided you with all of the information as to what we currently have in place by way of the agreement that was worked out with him when we discovered the fact that there was that encroachment. The same thing when you talk about trying to clean that up is that also exists on the west side of his bar that is also in the records and is in place when you do title work to take a look at that there's a common shared wall with his neighbor to the west. So there's nothing that we necessarily have to do, and I provided you with the information and never heard anything further about proceeding. So I have not done anything along those lines other than providing you with what you asked for to understand the scope of what the agreement was between the city and the Pioneer Saloon.
Okay, and that information, and Mark had a copy of that information as well. But I guess
he had that when we reviewed the matter with him, and he was given a copy way back then as well, and has never called or indicated to me that he would like to do anything different than what we had discovered, other than you were conveying that there might be interest from a generic discussion that would have occurred, and I provided you with an update on exactly what that agreement says and what exists between the city and Mr. Michelle.
Right, okay, so let me put it this way then. What would the next step be if we wanted to move that along to help that business owner out? Him contacting you to make a proposal, to find out costs, to bring it to council so council votes on the 18 inches? Or
Well, number one, we would need to bring the council up to speed on what the current situation is and existing. And do they feel that it's necessary that we proceed to attempt to dispose of that and to sell that encroachment back to him? That would be the step that the council would have to take. And then the question would be, depending on what the council's action would be, is then procedurally, and maybe as part of that same memo, is if the council chose to do that, we would then outline how we would necessarily go about attempting to do that.
okay, so can we get that on one of the next couple of council meetings agenda to discuss and bring everybody up to speed on it, and then maybe make a decision or a direction that we could give you and Mark? I think he was waiting to maybe see if we were back in session, because he would certainly answer any questions or give his side of the story, whatever it might be. But
well, there's nothing that we have done to cause this issue to exist. And if you go back, that it was the result of whatever was done in the early days, as far as the building of his building way back in the early years, along with whatever building it was had a common wall with, that when we went to take a look at, if you remember, we were given funds to potentially buy the property. We had it surveyed, and it showed that basically there was an encroachment by the Pioneer onto what would be the balance of the property. The vacant lot was that we ultimately did acquire from, I believe it was Mr. Gary Staber. And so the question becomes is, as we have it set up, that encroachment is okay as it exists. It can't be expanded. And so as it sits right now, if we don't do anything to go and build anything, there really isn't anything that absolutely needs to be done. He's allowed to keep it as is. He can replace as is. He just couldn't expand any further than what his perimeter wall is on the east side of his building. So whether the council believes it's necessary to undertake selling him whatever number of inches, and it varies kind of from the north end to the south end, whether we really need to sell that back to him, that's an item for debate, I think, within the council.
yeah, I agree. And I'd like to bring
just
that
as easy. Oh, I'm sorry. Or it could be just as easy as filing an agreement between the city onto that property.
I think that's what we already have. I think what he's looking at, Dwayne, is that he would like to purchase the 18 inches just in case he goes to ever sell that building. It makes that title, everything so much easier than having to have a new owner concerned about the fact that his building's 18 inches over on the technically city property. So it goes back to whenever that building was built in the 30s. I mean, it's just be a nice way to clean it up and help a business owner, I guess.
Well, but in that regard, that there is nothing that he necessarily has to fear by way of the agreement that we have that doesn't allow him to replace as is in its current location, even though it encroaches onto our property. He has the right into perpetuity to do that. He just can't expand that usage. And like I'm trying to describe for this east side of the building is there are some of the same conditions that exist on the west side with the common wall that they have, that they adjoin. There are existing requirements already in the recorded documents between his property and the property to the west. So what we're dealing with on the east side is really not a whole lot different than the requirements that exist on the west side that come into play should he ever go to sell his property.
Okay, well, and I don't care about, I mean, he's a business owner that wanted to try to clean up his title a little bit. It's 18 inches that he's going to pay for. He's going to pay for all the expenses and all the costs. And I'm just looking out as trying to help a local businessman on the main street clean it up for whatever reason it is. Maybe I don't get it. Maybe you don't get it, but he wanted to clean that 18 inches up. He seems like he's, and he's willing to pay for it. It isn't going to cost the taxpayer anything. He's going to buy that 18 inches of property and actually put money into our coffers. And I think it just make it a whole lot easier and make his life a little easier knowing that he owns he's not over on city property. So let's have the discussion.
We can put the information together and put it on the council agenda for debate and discussion and a decision.
Okay, thank you, Mike.
Do you want to do that? Well, I'm hoping what Mike's going to bring up will be what I'm thinking. So in-person meetings, maybe, or not?
That's coming under miscellaneous, so.
Yeah, so I was hoping that maybe if we go to in-person meetings, that could be on one of those agendas.
That sounds great, Dwayne. Thank you.
So you had something else, Sean?
No, I'm getting tired. I'll wait. I can ask the other ones.
Okay.
Mickey's eyes are getting droopy. I can see him.
Okay, Mike.
Like she was falling asleep.
I should probably let Ken tell this story that, was it last week, Ken, that you completed the installation of all of the equipment up in the council chambers? Why don't you tell that part of it since you were involved?
Yeah, so we got everything wrapped up for the installation up there. I had to do some configuring with our YouTube account so that we could go live, and we did do a test of that and everything worked fine. One thing we were trying to do is find an operator for the equipment. Obviously, I had contacted Mitch Peterson that has always filmed our council meetings in the past, but our arrangement was through the school district previously. And I guess where I'm going with this is it looks like I've got Mitch on the line to continue to record our meetings for us. It'll be under half the cost going forward because we don't have processing that will have to be done anymore. Everything that's recorded is processed at that time by our new equipment. So it's just the time to record it and, operate the cameras and the live stream. But I just got our training with Mitch and our trainer from the company set up for tomorrow, actually. So we're going to run through everything tomorrow, and we'll do an internal test on a meeting, and I think we'll be ready to go for our next meeting in May in person. I don't foresee any further struggles. Everything has worked well so far, and a little testing we've done. So I'm going to say we'll be ready to go, but I don't want to 100% say it until after our training tomorrow, but I think we'll be good to go.
And that was going to be my message, is that based on our internal staff discussions and what Ken just described is new to me. I didn't know that we were set up for training tomorrow.
Yep.
But we were looking at either being able to come back in person either on May 17th or June 7th, that everything else has been completed and set up, and we're going to finalize our internal protocols on how we're going to handle staffing and attendance, that we still recognize that even with people getting shots, that we still need to handle the proper protocols and separations and those kind of things. And so we're trying to finalize all of those plans internally as we look at returning. But we're shooting for either May 17 or June 7th. And so depending on how things turn out and go with Ken, is we just need to be able to make sure things can function, that the last thing we want to do is open it up again and not have all of our equipment stuff ready to go, and to not be successful at the implementation of that. And so as Ken said, hopefully by getting Mitch and getting him trained, that we likely can be ready for the 17th. But if for any reason that wouldn't work, then we should absolutely be ready to go on June 7th. We do have you scheduled in the council chambers to this Thursday to be able to do the board and commission interviews, and we'll have it set up so that you can sit up at the council dais with the candidate coming in and sitting at a table out in the audience in front of you, with the other candidates in waiting, set up out in the hallway or downstairs. I don't know exactly what Barb has put together as to what she has sent them, but the intent would be is that you would invite in one person at a time coming in to do the interviews in front of the council to try to maintain all the appropriate COVID protocols.
Cool. And then I see on the schedule that there's a group council picture at the end of the first night for everybody, just if you want to dress up or whatever you want to do. So
Barb, were you able to get that arranged with Patrick from his end?
No, that's a good reminder. No, I did not. So Patrick, I'm wondering if you would be available on Thursday at 7:15 to do a group picture of the council.
Unless, for the council's benefit, if you wanted to show up before the 5:30, we could do it ahead of the meeting. But
you're good with that?
That would work
Okay.
too.
He's good with the 7:15, he said. Give a thumbs up.
okay,
Thank
so
you.
you could provide enough light in your camera at that time of night, Patrick? All right, then we'll do it when it's done then, without
You might have to
readjusting.
light 2 candles.
Okay. Anything else?
I did have one additional item that not many people take notice of, but I just wanted to let you know that this is Professional Municipal Clerks Week, May 2 through 8. So this week it's just a national recognition that all of the clerk duties that get done, and that's part of a combination with my position, but also a lot of the duties that Barb performs. When you take a look at agenda preparation, minutes, ordinances, resolutions, contracts and agreements, all the licensing, work with the elections, and all of those duties, publication of notices for meetings, publications that go into the legal documents section of the newspaper as far as public hearings or different things of that nature. Those duties are typically performed by a city clerk or a deputy city clerk, and that's kind of the combination that Barb and I work together on. And so little known is it this week that it's Professional Municipal Clerks Week.
Cool.
So,
Good
Well,
job,
I'd like
Barb.
to say thank you for your service, Mike. Same with you, Barb. You do a great job. Thank you.
Good job, Mike.
and so as Rick promised earlier this afternoon, he said he'd send us flowers.
I tried giving him a phone hug and he wouldn't take it.
Hey, Dwayne, I just quickly, I'd like to
Yeah.
thank you and the council and the commission for your support through this, through the study. It really helps us as management. I think I can speak for all of us managers when you have the support of the commissions and councils when it comes to negotiations for compensation. I know it's not easy. It's definitely not easy on my end either. It's not always comfortable, but I really appreciate your support because it goes a long ways in helping us manage what we do. So thanks.
Great, thank you. Hey, I got one question and then Somebody asked me if they can buy the bricks that they're taking up on the construction site. And I don't
think those are
know,
called for. I think that if you ask the city engineer, he's gonna tell you those are already called for.
probably, but I said I would ask.
That at this point, the city hasn't retained control, that it was going to be too costly in the construction contract to try to separate those and deal with that. Ultimately, that would be a question that would have to be posed to the contractor, whether they have what they're planning to do with them and where they're going to go with them. That would be up to the contractor.
Okay.
They're getting crushed with all the blacktop concrete that they're removing already. To separate all that would, the contractor would never do that without a heavy penny to get paid for that.
Okay. That's what I wanted to know. Thank you. Anybody else have anything for the good of the council? Otherwise, I'd take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thanks, Maggie. Support?
Second.
Okay, Mike, or Maggie and Rick made the motion. All in favor, say aye.
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 Thanks, everyone. We did a lot tonight again, so.
Good night, everybody.
Good
Have a
night.
good night's sleep.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Hey.